The rain hammered the windshield like 1,000 accusations as I sped down the slick interstate outside Seattle, my knuckles white on the wheel, tears blurring the taillights ahead. I'd left everything behind: my job, my family, the suffocating whispers of a town that never understood me, chasing a ghost of a dream that felt more like a curse. Then, in that split second when lightning cracked the sky, her car swerved into my lane, metal screaming against metal, and our worlds collided in a symphony of shattering glass and unspoken promises. I don't remember the impact, only the cold seep of blood down my temple and the distant wail of sirens cutting through the storm. When my eyes fluttered open in the sterile glow of Harborview Medical Center, the first face I saw wasn't a doctor's, but hers, Alara Voss, with rain-soaked hair clinging to her cheeks like dark silk, her hazel eyes wide with a fear that mirrored my own. She was 26, a freelance photographer from Portland who'd been fleeing her own demons, and in that moment, as she squeezed my hand with trembling fingers, I felt the universe shift. "You're okay," she whispered, her voice a lifeline in the chaos. "I'm Riley. And you're not alone anymore." We spent the next 3 days in adjacent rooms, connected by beeping monitors and the thin thread of shared survival. Nurses bustled around us, but it was her visits that stitched me back together. I'd turn 25 next month, a milestone I'd planned to ignore in some dingy motel, but Alara brought me wildflowers pilfered from the hospital courtyard, their petals bruised like my heart. She talked about her camera, how it captured moments the world tried to erase: sunsets over the Columbia River, the quiet defiance in a stranger's smile. I confessed my secrets in fragments, the way my parents' Bible thumped like a judge's gavel every time I dared to love differently, the girlfriend who'd vanished when the town turned vicious. Alara listened without pity, her touch light on my arm, igniting sparks I hadn't felt since I was a scared teen hiding crushes in notebook margins. By the time they discharged us, the storm had passed, leaving Seattle's skies a bruised lavender. "Come with me," she said, not a question but an invitation etched in her gaze. I hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding, my beat-up Honda trailing her vintage Jeep south toward Portland. The drive was a blur of evergreens and coffee stops, her playlist filling the cab with indie folk that wrapped around my ribs like a hug. We didn't kiss that first night in her tiny attic apartment overlooking the Willamette. Too raw, too soon, but when she called my name over takeout Thai, "Alex," past the spring rolls, the room tilted, and I knew this was the start of something that could unravel me. Portland welcomed us like an old friend with secrets. Alara's world was a kaleidoscope of galleries and dive bars, where artists with dyed hair and tattooed regrets gathered under strings of Edison bulbs. I crashed on her couch at first, job hunting by day, barista gigs, anything to keep the lights on, while she vanished into the streets with her Nikon, chasing light and truth. Nights blurred into confessions over cheap wine, her evangelical upbringing in rural Oregon, the mother who'd prayed away her confusion with holy water and hushed tones, my own flight from Spokane, where high school hallways echoed with slurs that still haunted my dreams. "I thought love was a sin they could scrub out of me," she admitted one evening, her fingers tracing patterns on my knee. I leaned in, breath catching, and murmured, "Then let's rewrite the scripture." Our first kiss happened under the Hawthorne Bridge at midnight, fireworks from a distant festival painting the sky in gold. She tasted like rain and rebellion, her hands framing my face as if I were a fragile print she feared smudging. We tumbled into her bed that night, bodies learning each other in the dim glow of street lamps filtering through lace curtains. It was tender at first, fingertips mapping collarbones, lips brushing eyelids, then urgent, a dam breaking after years of drought. I arched into her touch, whispering her name like a prayer, and in that tangle of sheets and sighs, the world outside ceased to spin. We were two women reclaiming what society had tried to steal, the raw, unapologetic beauty of loving without apology. But paradise in Portland came with shadows. Alara's ex, Marcus, a brooding sculptor with a jealousy that festered like an open wound, started circling. He never accepted her leaving, convinced her phase would pass if he just pushed hard enough. Texts turned to calls, voicemails laced with venom. "You're throwing away everything for some confused girl?" I saw the toll in her slumped shoulders, the way she'd stare at her phone like it held grenades. One crisp October afternoon, as we wandered the Saturday market hand in hand, fingers laced defiantly amid the scent of crepes and handmade jewelry, he appeared like a storm cloud. Tall, bearded, with eyes like chipped obsidian, he blocked our path near a stall of crystal pendants. "Ilara," he growled, ignoring me entirely. "This isn't you. Come home." She stiffened, her grip tightening on mine until it hurt. "Marcus, it's over. I told you that." But he stepped closer, voice dropping to a hiss that drew stares from passers-by. "You're delusional. This experiment will crash and burn." My blood boiled, protective fire surging through me. "Back off," I snapped, stepping forward, my 5'4" frame no match but fueled by a lifetime of standing ground. He laughed, a bitter bark, and shoved my shoulder, hard enough to send me stumbling into a display of pottery that shattered like my resolve. Ilara gasped, pulling me up as security swarmed, but the damage lingered in the bruise blooming on my arm and the fear flickering in her eyes. That night, we barricaded ourselves in her apartment, windows latched against the chill wind rattling the panes. She iced my shoulder with apologies melting into tears, her head in my lap as I stroked her hair. "He's not worth this," I soothed, though my heart pounded with the what-ifs. We made love slowly then, reclaiming the space he'd tainted, her mouth on my scars, my nails digging into her back as if to anchor us both. In the afterglow, tangled and breathless, she traced my lips and said, "I love you, Alex. More than the fear." Those words were oxygen, filling lungs I'd forgotten how to use. Winter crept in with its gray veil, blanketing Portland in mist that mirrored the fog in our lives. I landed a job at a cozy bookstore in the Pearl District, shelves groaning under volumes of poetry and queer histories that felt like home. Ilara's work flourished, a gallery show of her Storm series. Images of fractured skies and resilient faces drew crowds, including a queer collective that embraced us like long-lost kin. We attended potlucks in lofts strung with fairy lights, shared stories of coming out over vegan lasagna, danced to Chapel Roan in crowded bars where no one batted an eye at our stolen kisses. For the first time, love didn't feel like a battlefield. It was a garden we tended together, roots intertwining beneath the soil. Yet Marcus's shadow lengthened. Anonymous letters arrived at the gallery, scrawled warnings. "She's mine. Leave or regret it." Ilara's sleep fractured, nightmares jerking her awake with cries I soothed in the dark. I urged her to file a restraining order, but she hesitated, old loyalties warring with new courage. "He was my first everything," she confessed one snowy morning, snowflakes dusting her lashes as we sipped cocoa on the fire escape. "Forgiving myself for loving you means letting him go completely." I pulled her close, our breaths mingling in frosty clouds. "Then let's burn the bridge together." The turning point came on New Year's Eve, amid the revelry of first-night celebrations. We'd planned a quiet escape to the waterfront, but Marcus ambushed us near the food trucks, reeking of whiskey and rage. This time, he wasn't alone. Two burly friends flanked him, their postures screaming threat. "You think you can steal her?" he snarled, lunging for Ilara's arm. A chaos erupted. I shoved him back, screaming for help as the crowd surged. One of his cronies grabbed me from behind, pinning my arms while the other swung at Ilara. Fists flew, a bottle shattered, and in the melee, Ilara's camera, her talisman, crunched under a boot. Sirens wailed again, echoes of our first meeting, as police hauled them away. We collapsed against each other on the cold pavement, bloodied but unbroken, her hand finding mine amid the flashing lights. In the aftermath, as we nursed wounds in an ER that smelled of antiseptic and regret, something solidified between us. Alara filed the papers the next day, her signature steady as she met my eyes across the courthouse bench. No more running, she vowed. Spring thawed the city, and with it came renewal. I proposed a road trip down the coast, chasing sunsets from Cannon Beach to Big Sur. We packed the Jeep with tents and playlists, leaving Portland's ghosts in the rearview. Along Highway 101, we parked on cliffs where waves crashed like applause, making love under star-pricked skies, her calling my name in whispers that echoed the ocean's roar. But love's true test arrived unbidden, in the form of my past crashing into our present. A call from Spokane, my mother, voice brittle over the line. "Your father's dying, Alex. Come home." The words landed like shrapnel. Dad, stoic mill worker, silent architect of my shame, now frail in a hospice bed, his lungs ravaged by years in the lumber yards. Alara drove us east without question, her hand on my thigh the entire 12 hours, a steady pulse against my rising panic. The town hadn't changed. Faded clapboard houses, church steeples piercing judgmental skies, neighbors' stares sharpening as we pulled up in her Jeep, rainbow sticker glinting defiantly on the bumper. Mom met us at the door, her face a map of grief and unspoken accusations, eyes sliding over Alara like she was a smudge on fine china. "Who's this?" she asked, tone laced with frost. "My partner," I replied, chin lifted, pulling Alara closer. The air thickened, but we stepped inside anyway, the house heavy with the scent of boiled cabbage and regret. Dad lay in the living room, oxygen mask fogging with each labored breath, his eyes, once steel, now soft with the clarity of endings. He beckoned me over, voice a rasp. "Alexandra, I was wrong. About you. About everything." Tears carved paths down his weathered cheeks. "Love who loves you back. Don't waste it like I did." Alara stood sentinel by the window, her presence a quiet revolution. That night, as Mom retreated to her prayers, Dad pulled us both close, his gnarled hand enveloping ours. "Take care of each other," he murmured, and in that fragile circle, forgiveness bloomed like wildflowers through cracked concrete. He slipped away at dawn, the room bathed in pink light, and though grief clawed at me, Alara's arms were my harbor. At the funeral, under a sky spitting reluctant rain, Mom approached us hesitantly. He told me, "Before. I'm sorry. It wasn't absolution. Not yet, but a crack in the wall, a promise of mending." We left Spokane lighter, the weight of old chains loosening with each mile west. Back in Portland, summer unfurled in lazy abundance, picnics in Washington Park, her lens capturing my laughter amid rhododendron blooms, midnight swims in the Willamette, bodies slick and silvered by moonlight. Our love deepened into something sacred, conversations over breakfast about futures, dreams of a house with a garden where we could plant roots unapologetically. Yet, the kinks persisted, a homophobic landlord raising rent after spotting our pride flag, whispers at my bookstore when customers clocked our rings, simple silver bands we'd exchanged on a whim during a hike in the Cascades. The real storm brewed when Alara's gallery show toured to San Francisco, a glittering opportunity laced with peril. Marcus, out on bail, saw the announcement online and descended like a vulture, crashing the opening night at the Castro's vibrant edge. The gallery pulsed with energy, queer icons mingling with collectors, walls alive with her photos of us veiled in abstraction, intertwined shadows, eyes locked in eternal gaze. I wore a black dress that hugged my curves, her hand warm in mine, as we navigated the crowd. Then his voice sliced through. "Alara, you bitch, parading this filth?" He barreled through, face twisted in fury, knocking champagne flutes to the floor in a cascade of shards. Security was seconds away, but he reached her first, grabbing her wrist with bruising force. Adrenaline surged. I launched myself between them, nails raking his arm as I screamed, "Let her go!" He backhanded me, stars exploding behind my eyes, but Alara twisted free, knee driving into his groin with a precision born of survival. The room erupted. Guests shouting, phones flashing, as guards pinned him down. Blood trickled from my lip, but triumph burned brighter. We stood together, chests heaving, her fingers lacing mine like armor. In the quiet that followed, as police statements blurred into exhaustion, Alara turned to me, eyes fierce with love. "We're unbreakable," she said, kissing the cut on my mouth. The incident made local news, headlines touting, "Artist fights back against ex's homophobic rage," and surprisingly, it catapulted her work into the spotlight. Invitations poured in, TEDx talks on queer visibility, features in Out magazine. But fame's glare revealed fractures, paparazzi lurking outside our door, Alara's anxiety spiking under the scrutiny. "I just want us," she confessed one night, curled against me in our new apartment, a sunny walk-up with views of Mount Hood. "The world can wait." I quit the bookstore for a remote editing gig, freeing us to travel. Weekends in the Olympics, where we hiked to hidden lakes and skinny-dipped under waterfalls, her laughter echoing off granite walls. We adopted a rescue mutt named Luna, her wagging tail a metronome to our mornings. Yet the undercurrent of doubt persisted, mine mostly. Late at night, I'd wake to the ghost of Spokane's echoes. Am I enough? Does she regret choosing this life? Alara sensed it, drawing me back with touches that spoke louder than words, fingers in my hair, lips on my neck, bodies moving in rhythms that erased all questions. Fall painted the city in fire, and with it came a crossroads. Alara's mother, long estranged, reached out after seeing the news, a tentative email, "I'd like to meet. If you're open." We debated for days over cider at a Nob Hill pub, leaves swirling like confetti outside. What if it's a trap? I worried. But Alara's eyes held resolve. Healing starts somewhere. We flew to Eugene, the drive to her childhood home a tense ribbon of highway flanked by golden vineyards. Her mom waited on the porch of a modest rancher, silver streaking her bun, face etched with the lines of unspoken sorrows. No hugs, just tea in the kitchen where Alara once hid love notes in cereal boxes. The conversation unfolded like a fragile origami, apologies folded into regrets, tears seasoning the shortbread. "I thought I was saving you," her mom admitted, voice cracking. "But I lost my daughter instead." Alara's hand trembled in mine under the table. "You can still know me," she said softly, "with her." By evening's end, a tentative bridge formed, not whole, but standing. As we drove back to the airport, Alara leaned her head on my shoulder. "Thank you for being my courage." Winter's grip tightened, but our love warmed like heathfire. Holiday lights twinkled in the Pearl, and we hosted our first Friendsgiving, tables groaning with tofurkey and stories, Luna begging for scraps underfoot. Amid the laughter, Alara pulled me aside to the balcony, snow dusting our coats. "Marry me, Alex," she said, not a question but a vow, ring glinting in her palm, a sapphire flanked by diamonds, evoking stormy skies and endless seas. Tears froze on my lashes as I nodded, pulling her into a kiss that tasted of pine and promise. The party erupted in cheers when we announced it, toasts raised to futures unbroken. But joy's shadow is peril, and ours arrived with a vengeance. Marcus's trial loomed in spring, a spectacle that dredged up every scar. He pled not guilty, his lawyer spinning tales of passion gone awry, painting Alara as the villain who abandoned him for unnatural urges. The courtroom in Multnomah County reeked of polished wood and tension, spectators murmuring as we took the stand. Alara testified first, voice steady as she recounted the assaults, her photos projected like evidence of her soul. Then me, heart hammering, I detailed the shoves, the threats, the way his hate tried to eclipse our light. Cross-examination clawed at me. "Isn't it true you provoked him?" But I held firm, eyes locked on Alara across the room, her nod my anchor. The jury deliberated 2 days. We waited in a courthouse cafe, hands clasped over cooling lattes. When the verdict rang, guilty on all counts, 5 years, relief crashed over us like a wave. Outside, rain slicked the streets, but we danced in it anyway, strangers clapping as we spun. "It's over," she breathed against my lips. Yet freedom's taste was bittersweet. Therapy sessions unpacked the trauma, nights where nightmares clawed us awake. We leaned into each other, rebuilding with patience. Yoga in the park, journaling by candlelight, her camera now chronicling our quiet victories, a proposal sunset, Luna's first snow romp. Summer swelled with plans. A courthouse wedding in August, intimate under Portland's rose arbors, vows exchanged amid buzzing bees and tearful friends. I wore white linen, she a flowing sundress the color of Puget Sound, rings slid on with whispers of forever. The reception spilled into a backyard bash, fireflies dancing to violin covers of our songs, toasts to resilience and chosen family. As dusk deepened, we slipped away to the rooftop, city lights sprawling like a promise kept. "Every time you call my name," she murmured, tracing my jaw, "the world stands still." I smiled, pulling her close. And I know I'm not alone. Life post-vows unfolded in layers of grace. We bought a fixer-upper in Selwood, weekends spent painting walls sage green and planting lavender that perfumed our dreams. Alara's book deal came through, a memoir woven with photos, Shuttered Hearts, Loving Through the Storm, topping queer lit charts, proceeds funding scholarships for young artists like us. I started a blog, essays on reclaiming narratives, words flowing freer than ever. Challenges lingered, a miscarriage scare that hollowed us for weeks, societal jabs that stung like nettles, but each trial forged us stronger, our love a forge of its own. One crisp autumn eve, 5 years to the day of our crash, we revisited the interstate pullout, wildflowers nodding in the breeze. Luna chased butterflies as we spread a blanket, picnic unpacked with the care of ritual. Alara pulled out her camera, snapping me against the sunset, then set it aside to draw me near. "Here's to us," she toasted with sparkling cider, clinking glasses that chimed like bells. As stars pricked the velvet sky, we lay entwined, her head on my chest, heartbeats syncing with mine. In that vast quiet, I realized the truth. Love isn't the absence of storms, but the courage to dance in them. And with her, every whisper of my name was a world reborn.